Part 45. A Middle School Cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 443. Tisk, although the situation is similar to what I expected, I still feel a little unhappy. Makoto Takahashi, who was finishing the manga manuscript with his head down, stopped writing after hearing Yoshida's report after returning from the monthly serialization meeting. Paintbrush, after pondering for a moment, raised his head and asked Yoshida, "Hey, my dependent cat, why can't the manga White Rabbit Candy be serialized? What's the reason behind the monthly editor's side? I have said that the manga White Rabbit Candy is not unavailable for serialization, but is a candidate for serialization." Yoshida's eyebrows were almost twisted together at this moment. As expected, the editor of the monthly magazine asked himself to tell Takahashi Makoto tactfully convey that the manga cannot be serialized. This mission of serial is definitely Honkyuakuo's revenge. After all, Chen, you also know that the number of comics serialized in the monthly magazine is limited. Although several comics were included in the list of candidates for having at the serialization meeting, there is no real having. If those few comics are cut in half in the future, if your comic is definitely cut in half, then the monthly magazine will definitely serialize your White Rabbit Candy as soon as possible. Hey, is this a charity? As Yoshida expected, after listening to his explanation, Takahashi Makoto didn't get angry, but the unhappy look on his face was quite obvious. In this case, we can only adopt the second plan. Tisk, even though we observed the world line of the current development of events at the beginning, wait, all of this may also be Stein's, Gates' choice. Speaking of Cheng, what do you want to do? Seeing the expression on Takahashi Cheng's face change from anger to silence, and then to excitement, Yoshida suddenly had an ominous premonition. My familiar cat, I guess it's less than a month until the next monthly serialization meeting, right? Makoto Takahashi did not answer Yoshida's question, but instead asked with concern about the next serialization meeting. This abnormal behavior made Yoshida's ominous premonition even stronger. I said, Chen, are you? Since the comic White Rabbit Candy is not suitable for serialization, then resubmit a new serialization. Makoto Takahashi scratched his head in distress and sighed in a depressed tone, although the burden is a bit heavy. But thinking of it after that, I can gain a lot of pleasure from both Jisang and the monthly editor. Well, equivalent exchange is established, and it seems that the second set of plans can be carried out. I told you it's not suitable for serialization, Submit a new serialization. Because of the madness that Takahashi Makoto unconsciously exuded, Yoshida's reaction today was a little slower than usual, but he still paid attention. Let's get to the point of Takahashi Makoto's words. Chen, do you plan to submit another new comic to the next monthly serialization meeting? Let's not talk about whether you can afford it. If the comic White Rabbit Candy starts to be serialized in the future, do you plan to start with it? Let's go draw another comic. Huh? My beloved cat, you don't think I will stop completing the manga manuscript of White Rabbit Candy, do you? Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida with contempt and said nonchalantly, man. No matter what, whether it is a new serial or White Rabbit Candy, I will continue to draw it. Hey, Chen, are you kidding me? Even if a monster like Takahashi Makoto could complete 2 monthly comic series in 1 month, Yoshida never thought that Takahashi Makoto could do it to this extent. Even if Takahashi Makoto works around the clock every day, he can't do it. And if Chen, you just want to serialize it in a monthly magazine, I can accept it by resubmitting a new serialization, but if that's the case, then there is no need for the comic White Rabbit Candy. I have promised Jingzonghao Jisang before that even if Jisang is the only one observing, I will complete the comic White Rabbit Candy. This has nothing to do with the issue of whether the comic is serialized or not, it is just a tribute to beautiful and great. I only retain a trace of respect for my existence. Makoto Takahashi looked at the completed manga manuscript on the table with a serious look on his face. being ridiculed, bullied, and even deceived by a woman, but, Jingzonghao Jisang, who can withstand all cynicism, can face all difficulties and hardships with a smile, and has not lost his true heart. Because of hatred, nor has he lost his love for life, the powerful soul hidden in that weak body is worthy of me. Do something respectfully. Yoshida also knew a lot about Jingzonghao after being complained by Takahashi Makoto. In Yoshida's opinion, Jingzonghao's behavior can be evaluated as extremely stupid. But Yoshida also had to admit that if it were him, after enduring the double combo of Torin and Zitang Daddy, he would never be able to reach that level. It should be said that a man is a man until death. Stupid creature. And speaking of, Chen, are you already passionate? Although he used a questioning tone, Yoshida can be sure that the reason why Takahashi Makoto made such a passionate speech at this moment is definitely tsundere. Hey. As early as the summer when I was 12 years old, after witnessing the zombie riot, the blood in my body had already cooled down. Makoto Takahashi seemed unwilling to continue discussing this topic with Yoshida, and decisively used the magical skill of topic change. As for submitting a new serial, I have promised Lyoza before that I want to witness his growth. And the way for cartoonists to witness each other's growth, in addition to the duel in comics, is it to fist to the flesh explosive clothes fight? No, I'm not exaggerating. With Lyoza's skills, I can fight 100 of them. Yoshida said that there were too many things to complain about in what Takahashi Makoto just said, and he didn't even know how to speak. And Takahashi Makoto, you are obviously just a cartoonist, but you have plug-in level combat effectiveness. Is this something worth being proud of? On one side, I promised Yoshida that he would complete the manga, and on the other side, I promised Ryoko to witness the growth of the showdown. Makoto Takahashi suddenly looked at Yoshida with sadness, revealing the words "intelligence is in hand, the world is mine." There is a smile, and those words and deeds on the editorial side of the monthly magazine before. My beloved cat, by the way, you have never wanted to sign a contract with the devil butler and take revenge? Oh, my beloved cat, your face has changed. Tisk. That's because I heard the whispers of ghosts and demons. Of course Yoshida was unhappy with the behavior of the monthly magazine editor, but revenge, or something, Yoshida really hadn't thought about it. After all, the group of superficial people on the editorial side of Revenge Monthly, regardless of whether they feel a sense of accomplishment, Yoshida said that instead of wasting time on such things, it is better to monitor the various lazy sea otters recently. Originally, I thought that after the comic clan had dominated the monthly magazine, the editors of the monthly magazine would like healing comics very much, so I planned to serialize the same healing comic White Rabbit Candy in the next comic, but Takahashi Makoto spread his hands and looked helpless. Since such a healing comic cannot pass the serialization meeting, then I can only change to a serious comic that is more in line with the current social outlook. Aiken, you have actually thought about it a long time ago, right? Yoshida suddenly felt weak. Speaking of which, Aiken, if you knew that White Rabbit Candy could not be serialized, why did you ask me to serialize this movie in the first place? What about submitting comics to monthly serialization meetings? Because when human beings fight for profit, their ugly appearance is like that of a circus clown, which is quite interesting. When it comes to the topic of bad taste, Yoshida just evaluated her as a hot-blooded tsundere. Takahashi Makoto had a devilish smile on his face at this moment, like a real devil, and it is said that you performed very well this time in My Familiar Cat, although it is not as domineering as Master Zuch's verbal battle with the Confucian scholars, but it has shown quite good potential. Should it be said that it is worthy of being my dependent? The bad taste of Makoto Takahashi. At this moment, Yoshida really wants to know who taught Takahashi Makoto to be such a teacher. Wait a minute, Chen, how did you know what happened at the monthly serialization meeting? Yoshida suddenly realized something was wrong. After the serialization meeting, I came to you as soon as possible. Hey. My beloved cat, You haven't understood this kind of thing yet? Of course it was the king of Black Flame who told me. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida with contempt. You know, the manga artist Shinkai Makoto's comic Electromagnetic Gun has been confirmed to be serialized. As the king of Black Flame who composes the cartoonist Makoto Shinkai, he will naturally tell me as soon as he learns this news. But, I remember that I told Yujiro before that we have to wait until the next time we are all here to talk about what happened at the monthly serialization meeting, considering that Makoto Takahashi will definitely be concerned about the editor of the monthly magazine. To carry out revenge, Yoshida specifically told Yujiro after the monthly serialization meeting, but Yoshida never expected that on his way to Takahashi Makoto had completely grasped what he should not. No information. Is it difficult to get information from idiot servant? Makoto Takahashi said in a matter-of-fact tone, which left Yoshida speechless. According to my instructions, the king of Black Flame only torture. No, after a little probing, that idiot servant got it right. Tisk, that guy Yujiro, sure enough, it's not enough to make a fool of yourself. Hey, this way of speaking, Yoshida, please show some respect to me. As my beloved, if you, my beloved cat, are bullied, of course I will take revenge. Makoto Takahashi spun the brush in his hand and said words that moved Yoshida and instantly turned him into a hypocrite. Although I deliberately sent my familiar cat to be bullied by the editor of the monthly magazine, but if I didn't do this, I would have no so-called righteousness and reason to play. Torture, the editor of the monthly magazine. What a bunch of stupid people. Then thank you very much, I should have said this at this time. I really wanted to say this at this time. Yoshida gritted his teeth and looked at Makoto Takahashi and roared loudly, but now I completely say it. Eh? Didn't you say that before? Looking at Yoshida, who was speechless, Takahashi Makoto waved his hand nonchalantly. Don't worry about it, don't worry about it. From now on, my cat, you just need to worship me like the little sea otter, as the god of the new world. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 444. No matter what the reason is, Yoshida will not worship Takahashi Makoto as the god of the new world like the little otter. Originally, Yoshida planned to leave directly after informing Takahashi Makoto of the results of the serialization meeting. Originally, it should be like this, and there is nothing wrong. But after hearing that Takahashi Makoto plans to resubmit a new serialization, especially after hearing Takahashi Makoto's evaluation of that comic as a serious comic that conforms to the current social outlook, Yoshida hesitated. Should he take the opportunity to ask about the new comic while Takahashi Makoto seems to be in a good mood, or should he suppress his curiosity and leave without asking about the new comic that Takahashi Makoto wants to complete next? Yoshida's instinctive intuition suggests that he should leave as soon as possible, but as usual, as the soul of the editor-in-chief of the cartoonist, Yoshida's restless roar betrays his instinctive intuition. Well, Chen, can I ask, what is the new comic you plan to submit to the monthly serialization meeting next? After asking, Yoshida noticed that Takahashi Makoto, who was very excited just now, had a helpless look on his face. Although he didn't know what Takahashi Makoto was thinking at the moment, looking at the change in the expression on Takahashi Makoto's face, Yoshida could also understand that he asked something he shouldn't ask. And, it's too late to choose to back off now. Hey, my cat, since you ask sincerely, I will tell you mercifully, Takahashi Makoto answered calmly, which made Yoshida feel like shit. Because Yoshida roughly guessed what Takahashi Makoto would say next. After all, as Takahashi Makoto's partner for many years, Yoshida has roughly familiarized and mastered some of Takahashi Makoto's ways of speaking and habits. In order to prevent the world from being destroyed, Takahashi Makoto should talk a lot of nonsense like this next, right? Then, according to the past development, Takahashi Makoto used the high-level topic diversion skill to make the curious self choose to retreat after enduring multiple mental attacks, so although he already knew what Takahashi Makoto would do next, Yoshida said that this unsolvable trick was simply impossible to defend against. Hey, my cat, what do you think is the neutral existence that binds humans and cannot bind humans in the harmonious life of humans? Looking at Yoshida with a vigilant face, Takahashi Makoto gently tapped the comic manuscript on the table with his fingers. After a moment of silence, he continued to add, because there are many existences that can be guessed, my cat, I will make an exception and give you 3 chances this time. Although Yoshida was a little puzzled that Takahashi Makoto did not play according to the routine this time, but this is also an unanswerable question. Maybe it's the bond between people, that's what we call feelings. Tisk, my beloved cat, look at your stupid look, I really shouldn't have expected your IQ. Takahashi Makoto looked at Yoshida, who was completely silent, and directly turned on the mocking mode. The answer is the law. It restricts the behavior of most normal people, but it cannot restrict people with mental disorders. Like weapons, its existence belongs to the neutral camp. It sounds like it makes sense. After all, the existence of the law. Hey, wait. We are now discussing your new series, Aiken, not the law. Yoshida, who was almost led astray by Takahashi Makoto, reacted quickly this time. At least after complaining about Takahashi Makoto's words, he immediately realized Takahashi Makoto's intention. By the way, Cheng, is your next comic about law? Or is it a mystery comic like the comic DN? You guessed wrong twice in a row, my beloved cat. I think for the rest of your life, I should consider recharging your IQ. After Takahashi Makoto mocked proudly, he said a devilish idea that made Yoshida shudder. By the way, can mystery comics kill the editors and readers of the monthly magazine to get pleasure? If you really want to retaliate against the editors of the monthly magazine, instead of spending time drawing that kind of brain-burning mystery comics, it is better to knock out all the editors of the monthly magazine, throw them on a deserted island, give each person a backpack with weapons, and start a killing spree where only one person can survive. I just want to ask, Cheng, what exactly is your new comic? Yoshida tried very hard to curb the brutal imagination of a certain devilish cartoonist, trying to bring the topic back to the comics being discussed. My beloved cat, it's hard to explain it to you with your wisdom. Takahashi Makoto pulled out a piece of manuscript paper that he had never drawn on the table, lowered his head and began to prepare to draw a new comic, but before the brush fell, Takahashi Makoto looked at Yoshida with disdain and muttered unsatisfactorily, I said, my beloved cat, didn't you see that I was about to enter the crazy cartoonist mode and start working? At this time, you should leave a classic villain exit line like I will be back, and then be blown away gorgeously. What's the matter with that I am sick look? So the new comic. You are really persistent, my cat. In response to Yoshida's repeated questions, Takahashi Makoto was a little unhappy and tapped the manuscript paper with his brush, complaining impatiently, can't you see that I haven't started drawing yet? Don't worry, my cat, as the pet of His Majesty Feng Guangai Yuan Kuma, once the new comic is completed, I will definitely tell you as soon as possible. But according to the principle of equivalent exchange, my cat, you'd better not appear in the same dimension with me recently, otherwise, I will use the magic sword Shattering Star to perform Bankai, and use a big general to send you into another dimension. Time, it's almost time, I should go to Hiramarikun to collect the comic manuscript. Yoshida has always used this excuse to escape. Finally, Yoshida, who sensed the murderous intent from Makoto Takahashi's gradually crumbling smile, decisively gave up the choice of further exploring the new manga truth and left in a hurry. Even when passing by Rina, who had just returned home, Yoshida was afraid that a certain Chuyuni cartoonist would suddenly go berserk, so he didn't even dare to say hello. Makoto, did you bully Mr. Yoshida again? After witnessing Yoshida's hasty departure, Rina, who returned home, looked at Makoto Takahashi with an inexplicable smile on his face. Relying on her familiarity with Makoto Takahashi, Rina quickly deduced the whole process of the incident and chuckled helplessly. Makoto is really something. Mr. Yoshida takes good care of you. It's not okay to keep bullying Mr. Yoshida like this. Occasionally, ahem, by the way, Makoto, is Mr. Yoshida here because your White Rabbit candy is about to start serialization? Which, I'm sorry to say, the manga White Rabbit candy failed to pass the serialization meeting. Takahashi Makoto restrained the smile on his face, pondered for a moment, and said to Rina helplessly, after all, which, you also know that the current parliament has been completely controlled by the organization. Our association currently has no time and energy to find talented humans to mix in. Is that so, a real man? Although it didn't pass this time, I think in the future. Hey, before Rina finished speaking, she was hugged by Takahashi Makoto. To be precise, the current behavior of a certain middle school cartoonist is the legendary taboo move killing with a girl in arms. How did you get today? Takahashi Makoto asked softly while blowing Rina's earlobe gently. By the way, Takahashi Makoto, dare you be honest with your hands? Putting them on Rina's body where you can't describe them and starting to do things that can't be described. Aren't you afraid of being punished by the god of bachelors? I was almost recognized today. Rina blushed and slapped Takahashi Makoto's claws away, asking in confusion, I'm not an idol singer anymore, why do I have to disguise myself when I go out now? It's the same reason as where there are people, there are rivers and lakes. After your identity as a witch is remembered by humans, even if you have lost your magic power now, even if you plan to live an ordinary life, humans still think that hunting witches is an infinitely glorious thing. When Takahashi Makoto said this, his face became a little ugly. Since your identity was almost discovered today, let me go with you tomorrow. Is this okay, Makoto? You are not a real man. Tomorrow, just in case, I will bring the magic sword. As long as it's not the immortal who has lived for thousands of years in the other world, no one will know your identity, and no one can hurt you. Compared to Rina's disguise being discovered, Takahashi Makoto's behavior is the most dangerous, right? That's not the case. After gently breaking free from Takahashi Makoto's embrace, Rina looked at Takahashi Makoto with some concern. Although I'm happy that Makoto-kun said that. Makoto-kun, didn't you tell me before that if White Rabbit candy couldn't be serialized, you would create a new comic? If you go with me tomorrow, then about the new comic. Tomorrow is an important day for Rin and Seiji, of course I have to show up. Takahashi Makoto hugged Rina again, but this time he didn't do anything excessive, but, Takahashi Makoto's tone when he spoke was a little off. And tomorrow I'm going to see, which little bastard dared to approach Rin. I'll definitely make that little bastard kneel in hell and repent 10,000 times. Although tomorrow is the day when Rin and Seiji enter the garden. Rina said with a smile and speechless emotion, but Makoto-kun, you are exaggerating too much. Humph, kill the danger in the bud, this is what is called taking precautions before it happens. After Takahashi Makoto finished speaking, his eyes shifted to Sadaharu who was lying on the ground, and asked Rina, hey, witch, how about we follow my previous plan and let Sadaharu and Ruri lead their cat and dog corps to become Rin's personal guards? Team, right. This alone is absolutely not enough. Rina rejected Takahashi Makoto's proposal righteously. If Makoto really wants to do this, it will scare other people's children. Tisk. Makoto, it's almost time, I should go cook. Rina broke free from Takahashi Makoto's arms again, looked at Takahashi Makoto's depressed face, and smiled beautifully. She walked quickly to the kitchen, and said with a smile, Makoto, the new comic draft is completed, work hard. Of course, I was known as the crazy demon god by Yuzan in the association. After watching Rina enter the kitchen, Takahashi Makoto stopped his second-year speech and quickly walked to the table full of comics. His expression became a little melancholy. There is less than a month left. In addition to the weekly comic Dream Eater comics to be completed every week, Takahashi Makoto also promised to complete the monthly comic White Rabbit Candy comics, as well as the new comics he talked about with Yoshida. So, Tisk, I think I'm in trouble. Well, just a little trouble. First of all, I apologize to all the readers for the recent updates. Then, a certain cat just wants to say that it is synchronized with Makoto's crazy monthly double serialization. This week, a certain cat will complete the work of 4 people alone. It's really synchronized. This is a curse, not the choice of Steins Gate. When I asked the boss to add more people, the reply I got was your awareness is not enough. How can you complain so much about the work of serving the people? You've only done a little bit of work and you're already complaining. You young people, what a lesson. Damn, the work that 4 people have done was done by 1 person, and that's just a little bit of work? I think it's more reliable to travel to another dimension. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 445. Boom. Uncle Tintin, who was carefully completing the comic manuscript, was startled by the sudden noise, and his hands trembled involuntarily, so the comic manuscript that was almost completed was scrapped again, seeing that because of the sudden sound just now, the sound of the ground made me surprised and drew a long comic strip through the character line. Uncle Tintin felt like he wanted to cry without tears. It's like a person who worked hard to build a pyramid with playing cards. When he finally reached the top of the pyramid, a person passing by suddenly sneezed, making the work that was about to be completed return to the past again, even if others didn't mean to. Anyone who has had such an experience will definitely beat the culprit who caused all this to have to death, right? But Uncle Tintin raised his head and looked at Makoto Takahashi, who was waving the brush again and starting to draw, and did not choose to do it. It's not that Uncle Tintin is worried that he will be killed by Makoto Takahashi if he takes action because of the difference in force value, nor is it because Uncle Tintin's temper is as explosive as that of Xiao Li Tanhua, nor is it because there are too many comic manuscripts accumulated in his hands. As for not having time to go to Takahashi Makoto's theory, the reason Uncle Ding Ding didn't take action was just because. Boom. Makoto Takahashi, who had been finishing the manga manuscript with a serious face just now, suddenly hit his head on the table without any control. Perhaps because of the pain, Takahashi Makoto woke up from his sleepiness, shook his head slightly, and then started to draw the comic manuscript with a serious face again, although Takahashi Makoto tried his best to pretend as if nothing had happened. But Tintin Gisang wanted to laugh but couldn't. I mean Cheng, why don't you take a break? Although he had vague guesses before, this time Uncle Ding could see clearly, especially Takahashi Makoto's pale face, which he couldn't hide. After getting tired, Uncle Ding Ding comforted him with some worry. I know how anxious you are to complete the comic manuscript, Cheng, but even so, there is no need to go to such an extent, right? If this continues, Cheng, my body may not be able to bear it. I made an appointment. No, I have to finish the comic manuscript I wrote with nonsense, even if I am exhausted. Although Takahashi Makoto still stubbornly refused Uncle Tintin's kind words of comfort, he put down the brush in his hand. While moving his right hand, which had begun to feel numb, Takahashi Makoto spoke in a melancholy tone, "Oh my, this state can last for a long time. By the way, how long will this state last until you are satisfied? If this continues, I'm really starting to suspect that you are a non-human being, Cheng." After hearing what Makoto Takahashi said, Uncle Ding couldn't help but rolled his eyes and muttered in his heart with a speechless expression. When Uncle Tintin knew that Makoto Takahashi planned to resubmit a new serial at the next monthly serialization meeting, he tried to console Makoto Takahashi many times, trying to dispel Makoto Takahashi's crazy idea. However, Makoto Takahashi moved out. The glorious history of serializing 3 comics at the same time in a weekly magazine actually convinced himself who wanted to convince Makoto Takahashi. After hearing Makoto Takahashi's plan, Uncle Tintin felt that as long as he worked hard, he could complete 2 monthly comics at the same time. After all, there is currently only Uncle Ding Ding left as an assistant, so the original assistant's work must now be completed by Uncle Ding Ding alone. Knowing that the workload will increase dramatically in the next period of time, Uncle Ding Ding is already prepared to fight to the death, but when he actually started to finish the comic draft, Uncle Tintin realized that what he had thought before was too simple. The comic manuscript of Dream Eaters serialized in the weekly magazine, and the comic manuscript of White Rabbit Candy that has not been serialized in the monthly magazine but still needs to be completed, has completely filled Uncle Tintin's desk. If it were in the past, faced with such a terrifying amount of comic manuscripts, Uncle Tintin would definitely choose to leave, even if the salary paid to the cartoonist was much higher than others. But this time, Uncle Tintin never asked to leave. Maybe at the beginning, Uncle Tintin had such an idea, but now he has completely disappeared. Looking at the comic manuscripts piled up on the desk of a middle school cartoonist, if the comic manuscripts that need to be completed by himself have piled up, so what about Takahashi Makoto's side? And the most important thing is that the manga manuscripts piled on the table now are not like the previous manga manuscripts. They were completed by Makoto Takahashi a long time ago and are hidden in places that normal people cannot think of. Uncle Tintin knows very well that Makoto Takahashi only started creating these comics in the past week. Are these hallucinations? Or is someone attacking me mentally again? Makoto Takahashi covered his remaining eyes with one hand and stood up from the chair with some difficulty. Hey, Chen, you. Seeing Takahashi Makoto stand up unsteadily, Uncle Ding Ding originally wanted to use the persuasion technique again, but after seeing Takahashi Makoto staggering before taking a step, he immediately walked quickly to Takahashi Makoto, supported the unsteady Takahashi Makoto, frowned and asked, "How long have you not slept, Chen?" Hey, the time calculation method in the human world was already forgotten when I finished DN. Besides, Makoto Takahashi shook his head slightly and sighed to Uncle Tintin with some depression. Don't judge me by your human way of thinking. It's just that I haven't slept for a few days. Every Demon King has a period of weakness, just like the periodic blood reduction effect of human women. It's already this time, do you still have to say these things? Uncle Tintin was quite helpless at the speech of a certain middle-level cartoonist. You couldn't stand still just now, right? By the way, you are doing this, until Rina-chan comes back and finds out. But you will be angry. Tisk. I'm really angry when I talk about this. I'm obviously just letting those little bastards with evil intentions to get close to Rin know the reality of this society. There's no need to instigate the witch to restrict my travel, right? And I just chose to do it during a week-long trip. Family trip. When he mentioned this matter again, Takahashi Makoto seemed to have temporarily got rid of the symptoms of physical weakness, and complained to Uncle Tintin, "Hey, Tintin-ji-san, obviously as a father, but you can't participate in the so-called parent-child travel. Do you think this is very unreasonable? Come on, let's initiate change together, change this decayed world, create a new world, and then reformulate the future of mankind. Behave properly." To be able to shake off a weak state for someone who hasn't slept well for several days, should it be said that it is really affected by the special title of Lilicon plus daughter controller? Hey, Chen, what have you done? Although you were not present at the scene, I heard Rina-chan mention it later. After hearing Takahashi Makoto's complaint, Uncle Tintin couldn't help but twitching the corner of his mouth. Every time when a little boy tries to get close to Rin-chan, he is always frightened into tears by a cat that suddenly jumps out or a dog that happens to pass by. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't have conclusive evidence, let alone restricting your actions, I would have arrested you long ago. Hey. That was a spontaneous act by the Saichun Legion and the Ruri Legion. I don't remember giving such an order. You know, when Rin learned to walk, he was already playing happily with the Saichun Ruri and the others. Takahashi Makoto said angrily, and by doing this, Sadaharu and Liulai are actually honing the courage of those little bastards. But I didn't expect that they can't stand it to this extent. Human beings are really weak existences. No, I think. By the way, normal people might be frightened by a cat or dog that suddenly jumps out, right? Not to mention those children who have just entered kindergarten. Should we say that Takahashi Makoto, you yourself are a freak, and your daughter with your blood is also a different existence? Speaking of Tintin-ji-san, is it appropriate to discuss this now? Makoto Takahashi pointed at the comic manuscript on Uncle Tintin's desk, and said maliciously in a tone full of sympathy and pity, although I really want to let Tintin-ji-san forget time and work to continue talking about this topic, but considering that there are still Jingzonghao-ji-san and the group of people on the editorial side of the monthly magazine waiting for me to trap you, so I kindly remind you this time. After Uncle Ding Ding glanced at Makoto Takahashi expressionlessly, he walked to his desk helplessly and began to enter work mode. Okay, it's almost time to rest. After Makoto Takahashi moved his body for a while, he returned to the desk again. After taking a deep breath, a fanatical look appeared on his face. Next, before work resumes, the first thing to do is, burn it. HN, the little universe joke has already been used. Uncle Ding Ding said that this is really not revenge. Have you used it? Then, let's change to a, roar. Use the power to destroy the world to vent your madness. Swastika. The magic sword is broken. The plot of death has also been used, on the first day. Uncle Tintin said that this is definitely not revenge. Hey, I want to be the demon god who is a crazy cartoonist, Phoenix Academy fierce man. Is it a combination of Naruto and One Piece? I've used it too. Uncle Tintin actually just wants to make a middle-aged cartoonist who can't finish comics for a long time without setting up a special gag. Fortunately, I just rested. Lou Bulletin. Lou Bulletin appears. Hey, this has nothing to do with comics at all, right? It's already a treacherous entry into Dynasty Warriors. Uncle Tintin's face was already full of black lines. Tisk, Tintin-ji-san, I really underestimated you. Makoto Takahashi, who was being complained about one after another, was also unhappy. After pondering for a moment, he picked up the manga manuscript in his hand and suddenly said in a serious tone, Servant Kwanki Mangaist Hohoin Kayama, come here in compliance with your summons. Are you my master? For Takahashi Makoto, using a joke that has not yet appeared in comics, Uncle Tintin was completely on his knees. By the way, which work is this from? A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 446. Actually, I should have stopped Cheng from doing this in the first place. It's just a candidate for serialization. It doesn't mean that there is no chance of serialization. On the contrary, it is very likely that it will become a new serialization next month or the month after that. Completing the comic manuscripts required for 2 monthly serials in 1 month is too much, even for Cheng. The monthly serialization meeting is getting closer and closer, and there are less than 3 days left. However, Takahashi Makoto proposed to resubmit a new serialization, but he has not notified Yoshida to observe it because he was too uneasy and went back and forth at home. Yoshida was pacing, waiting for Makoto Takahashi's call while beginning to reflect on his guilty self. It's not that Yoshida has not considered going to Takahashi Makoto's house to inquire about information under the guise of "I'm here to collect the manuscript of the weekly comic series Dream Eaters," but before Yoshida could even start to remember to take action, Takahashi Makoto informed him in advance. The arranged backhand was stopped. The manga manuscript of Dream Eater serialized in the weekly is delivered to Yoshida by Sadaharu every week, speaking of which, it was the first time I saw Sadaharu staring at the ninja protector on his head and appearing with a small bag containing the manga manuscript on his back. When it was in front of him, Editor-in-Chief Yoshida was really shocked. And every time Yoshida walked around Takahashi Makoto's house, there would always be cats and dogs nearby, conducting surveillance in all directions. At first, Yoshida did not notice this abnormal situation, but one day when Yoshida was about to enter Takahashi Makoto's house with the excuse of passing by Makoto's house to check out the progress of the manga manuscript, the cats began to bark and the dogs started to bark. It goes on, and the most cruel and crazy thing is that several tall giant dogs with vicious faces soon appeared in front of Yoshida, blocking Yoshida's way forward. So, Yoshida understood a truth from these abnormal behaviors. Without Takahashi Makoto's phone call, he would not have been able to successfully meet with Takahashi Makoto in the recent period. There are less than 3 days left before the monthly serialization meeting. However, there is still no action from Makoto Takahashi, and the phone is not answered. In addition, there are many cats and dogs guarding the road, which makes it possible to accept it unilaterally. Yoshida, who was contacted by Makoto Takahashi, was quite anxious. However, just when Yoshida was about to use his death blow consciousness and bravely break into the cat and dog guard army, Takahashi Makoto's call came. When Yoshida learned that the manga manuscript of the new manga had been completed, he immediately rushed to Takahashi Makoto's house. There was no obstruction along the way, and even the cat or dog that was responsible for surveillance did not appear again. Although he really wanted to see new comics, this situation still made Yoshida, who was in a hurry, full of black lines. By the way, no matter how close the relationship with cats and dogs is, no matter how good it is, if you can do this kind of thing, is that guy Makoto Takahashi really a human? Because there was no guard from the cat and dog army, Yoshida quickly arrived at Makoto Takahashi's house this time. Yoshida, who originally planned to complain to Takahashi Makoto in various ways, did not say anything after seeing Takahashi Makoto staring at the dark circles with a tired look on his face. "Aha, my familiar cat, you came quite quickly this time." Makoto Takahashi yawned and pointed at the manga manuscripts on the table and said listlessly, "Those are all sorted. You can read the manga manuscript, my cat, but you must not mess it up." It's not the first time I've read a manga manuscript. Yoshida knew it wasn't that Makoto Takahashi didn't trust him, and that what he said just now was just a habitual mockery. After all, a certain middle-class cartoonist possesses the attribute of venomous tongue and is the legendary not happy unless he ridicules the editor-in-charge star. "My familiar cat, I think the manga manuscript you want to observe most right now is probably the manga that is going to be submitted to the monthly serialization meeting, right?" Although he is in a very tired state both physically and mentally, when talking about the manga when writing the manuscript, Makoto Takahashi tried to stay awake and directly started arranging the order of Yoshida's observation of the manga manuscript. "So you can take the comic draft of Dream Eater back and read it slowly, but the comic draft of White Rabbit Candy has not been serialized, so I won't let you observe it." Okay, I know." Although Yoshida wanted to refuse Makoto Takahashi's arrangement, looking at Makoto Takahashi's tired look, as a conscientious editor, Yoshida still agreed to Makoto Takahashi's arrangement. While picking up the manga manuscript without Sie's name on the table, Yoshida comforted him with a worried tone, "Chen, how about I take the manga manuscript back to read and you take a good rest?" Before coming here today, Yoshida had considered that if Takahashi Makoto completed the manga draft for the new manga, then at the next monthly serialization meeting, he would definitely find a way to get White Rabbit candy into the monthly serialization. However, although he has not yet started to look through the manga manuscripts in his hands, looking at the piled manga manuscripts and the tired look on Makoto Takahashi's face, Yoshida certainly knows how much time Makoto Takahashi spent during this period in order to complete the manga manuscripts on the table. How hard you try. Yada. Although I really want to rest now, I feel that with your IQ, you will not be able to read the new manga. Makoto Takahashi leaned on the sofa, although his face looked tired. But the tone of speaking was full of ridicule. It's rare that I'm in a good mood today. After you finish reading the new comic manuscript, I will explain to you a little bit about the correct way to observe the new comic. Can't you tell me now? Yoshida stopped flipping the comic manuscript and looked at Makoto Takahashi helplessly. If Chen, you can tell me first, then I. My destined cat, have you forgotten the principle of equivalent exchange? Makoto Takahashi shook his head and interrupted Yoshida rudely. Besides, if you haven't read My Dependent Cat first, comics, even if I tell you the correct way to observe, it is still useless. Although it can be heard that Takahashi Makoto's words are definitely mocking his own IQ and vision, Yoshida feels like he is unable to refute. Ignoring Makoto Takahashi with a weird smile on his face, Yoshida began to look through the manga manuscript in his hand. The comic begins in a classroom, and the story begins with the students' fundraising activities. After a large amount of money was raised, it was kept by the class committee member Mayumi Hashimoto. Then the scene switched to another classmate in the classroom, a beautiful classmate with a playful smile. At first Yoshida thought it was a school comic similar to Clannad, but the subsequent development of the plot made Yoshida look very strange. Mayumi Hashimoto, who had previously kept the donations, suddenly discovered that the money was missing when she was getting ready to go home from school. However, the girl with the playful smile from before appeared like a savior, not only lending money to Mayumi Hashimoto, but he also promised to help Mayumi Hashimoto keep the secret of the missing donations. Then, the subsequent development of the comic made Yoshida feel the malice of a certain middle-class cartoonist. The girl who promised to keep Mayumi Hashimoto's secret was named Kuroda Aya. Taking advantage of this incident, she began to use coercion to arouse Mayumi Hashimoto. From small things like buying snacks, to extorting money, and finally letting Mayumi Hashimoto be a thief to steal things, using more handles generated when Mayumi Hashimoto was summoned, she further began to blackmail Mayumi into doing more and more excessive things. This development. After Yoshida had only read the first third of the chapter, his face was already quite ugly. Because similar incidents mentioned in the manga have appeared quite frequently in recent reports, and have attracted much attention from the public, if it weren't for the fact that he had not finished reading the manga manuscript in his hand, Yoshida would definitely persuade Takahashi Makoto to change the subject. My beloved cat, I know what you are thinking, because your expression now is the same as that of Tintin-ji-san when you saw this. Makoto Takahashi, who had been silent, suddenly said, so, if my familiar cat, if you, like Tintin-ji-san, plan to persuade me to change the theme of the comic, let's read the first chapter first. Maybe there will be unexpected developments in the next chapter. Yoshida glared at Makoto Takahashi angrily, and did not complain about anything. Instead, he continued to observe the content of the comic in his hand according to what Makoto Takahashi said. Yoshida naturally knew that what Makoto Takahashi said was right. If he hadn't read it, it would definitely be a serious dereliction of duty for the editor to make any comments after finishing the cartoon manuscript. Looking at the comics, Mayumi Hashimoto was bullied in various ways by Kuroda Aya, and even developed to make Mayumi Hashimoto do some things against her original wishes, such as going to the house to steal her parents' money, or pretending to be a girl. The kind-hearted classmate Mayumi Hashimoto was gradually distorted, and was forced to go astray step by step, while the beautiful classmate Aya Kuroda was the culprit, doing whatever she wanted. Even though he knew that this was just the content of the comic, Yoshida was still a little depressed. Do you know Hell Communication? I know. I know. It's the one who logs into Hell Communication at midnight, writes down the name of the person you hate, and if your resentment reaches a level that can be entrusted, the Hell Girl will appear and immediately blame you. Communication into Hell, right? Well, that's right. But how could such a thing happen? That's right, does Hell really exist? After being bullied by Kuroda Aya, Hashimoto Mayumi heard the conversation between two classmates who happened to pass by, and a trembling smile appeared on her face that had begun to twist. Hey, this Hell Communication or something, could it be another version of DN? He had already read half of the content of this chapter. Yoshida looked at the word that suddenly appeared in the comic, and his face with a look of surprise on his face, he put down the manga and asked Makoto Takahashi, although it's not detailed in the manga, I think this so-called Hell Communication should exist, right? My familiar cat, haven't I told you before about the consequences of spoilers? Makoto Takahashi squinted his right eye and asked Yoshida with a smile, so you want to die once? A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Male. Chapter 447. Many human beings are very interested in magic tricks like Chainsaw Living Man. In addition to the stimulation and mental pleasure they get from it, they are actually more secretly looking forward to it, looking forward to mistakes in the magic performance, looking forward to the original performance. What is just an entertainment activity to satisfy the mental stimulation, turns into an unforgettable blood feast. Because human nature is cruel. Just like the manga manuscript that Yoshida is observing at the moment, watching the manga Mayumi Hashimoto gradually go astray as the plot of the manga progresses. Yoshida, the manga observer, apart from regret and slight sympathy, originates from human beings. The influence of bad nature is also expected, looking forward to the collapse and fall of Mayumi Hashimoto in the comics. Especially after seeing in the manga, Mayumi Hashimoto actually connected to the legendary Hell Communication through the news she heard from her classmates, Yoshida could feel that he was very excited about the next content of the manga. Quite looking forward to it. I am Yama-ai, you called me here. Please accept it. If you really want to relieve your resentment, untie this red rope. Once you untie the rope, you will formally sign a contract with me. I will immediately exile the object of your resentment to hell. When Yoshida first saw the sudden appearance of the Hell Girl in the manga, he thought that this so-called Hell Communication was similar to the Death Book in DN. After all, they were just killing people in a way that humans could not understand. However, a girl who claimed to be Inmei suddenly appeared and revealed the unique rules of Hell Communication. However, after the resentment is resolved, you will have to pay me as the price. If you harm others, you will harm yourself. If you untie the rope, your own soul will fall into hell and you will not be able to go to the paradise world. Your soul will suffer. But, that will happen after you die. After reading the setting of Hell Communication in the manga, Yoshida instinctively noticed that something was not right. Unlike the Death Book in DN, this time the user needs to pay a price, and the price the user pays the soul lingers in hell forever after death. Sounds quite scary. Although humans have never seen the so-called heaven or hell, the threat of the soul lingers in hell forever after death still sounds quite threatening. At least in the manga, after connecting to the Hell Communication and hearing the detailed rules, Mayumi Hashimoto hesitated. Looking at the hesitant girl in the manga, Yoshida thought it was normal. After all, it involves the issue of the ownership of the soul after death. Although this is beyond the scope of common sense understanding of human beings, looking at the Hell Girl in Mai who appeared out of thin air, he was able to. It proves the so-called price, but Yoshida can feel it. Even after knowing the price, the girl named Mayumi Hashimoto will definitely untie the red thread on the straw doll. From the beginning, I connected to the Hell Communication full of resentment, then to the panic after hearing Inmai's explanation of the curse, then to all kinds of helplessness and resentment after Kuroda Aya's coercion, and finally to the solution, the red thread tied to the straw doll. Although Yoshida had predicted from the very beginning that the girl named Mayumi Hashimoto would definitely untie the red thread, but in just a few pages of the comic, the girl named Mayumi Hashimoto. The inner struggle is vividly reflected. In the manga, after the girl Mayumi Hashimoto untied the red thread on the straw doll, the scene of the manga suddenly changed to the beautiful classmate Aya Kuroda. Inmai and several monsters under his command recreated Kuroda Aya's sins, allowing Kuroda Aya to experience for herself what he had done to Hashimoto Mayumi, which made Kuroda Aya in despair and panic. Continuously struggling. Want to die once and see, Inmai said this expressionlessly while raising her right hand. The flowers on the kimono began to scatter everywhere, making Kuroda Aya fall into horror after being frightened. Coma. When Kuroda Aya woke up from the frightened coma, she found herself lying on a small boat, and Inmai turned into a ferryman, gently rocking the boat, carrying Kuroda, who was struggling. Aya-san is slowly heading towards hell. And Mayumi Hashimoto, after some hard work on her part, eliminated the misunderstandings that had occurred before and returned to the optimistic and cheerful female classmate she was before. But whenever Mayumi Hashimoto saw the middle of her chest, after that small mark similar to a tattoo, you will feel a little disappointed temporarily. Because that mark represents that after death, the soul will not be able to reach the paradise world, and will suffer forever and wander in hell. After watching Yoshida put down the manga manuscript, let out a long sigh and then entered deep thought, Takahashi Makoto stared at his editor-in-chief expectantly. You must know that Uncle Tintin, who was responsible for processing some of the manga manuscripts of this comic, couldn't wait to read it again after all the manga manuscripts were completed and sorted out. After reading it, just like Yoshida, he also fell into deep thought after sighing for a long time. Then. Now, I'm talking about Chang, this comic. After Yoshida pondered for a long time, he raised his head and was about to ask a question, but was directly interrupted by Takahashi Makoto. If you want to ask if the heroine of this comic is Ai Yanma, then the answer is yes. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida's surprised expression and said proudly, don't think that I have used the skill of mind reading. I can guess what you want to ask, just because your human thoughts are too simple. Okay. Perhaps because of the influence of the comic, Yoshida was a little depressed at the moment. After pondering for a moment, he asked with some concern, then Chang, what is the name of this comic? Don't text me the name of the comic before the monthly serialization meeting like last time. Isn't this good? Heroes always appear at critical moments. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida with a smile, his tone full of pride and satisfaction. I remember very clearly that when I told my cat the name of the comic White Rabbit Candy last time, you were so anxious that you almost cried. Such a loving and interesting entertainment activity. I really hope to play it a few more times. Cheng, your bad taste is hopeless. There is absolutely no hope. I am so unfortunate to be your editor in charge. The experience of asking Makoto Takahashi about the name of the comic in a humble manner before the monthly serialization meeting. At this moment, even if Yoshida just recalled it a little, he felt a pain in a place that could not be described. Hey, my beloved cat, there is no problem with telling you the name of this comic, but... Makoto Takahashi adjusted his sitting posture slightly, restrained the smile on his face, and asked in a very rare serious tone, then, let's follow the principle of equivalent exchange to conduct the transaction. My beloved cat, after reading this comic, do you really understand what the theme I want to talk about is? Yoshida frowned and remained silent for such a weird question from Makoto Takahashi. Oh? Judging from your expression, it seems that the difficulty of this question is a bit high. Then, how about giving you a little hint? Makoto Takahashi, who was serious just now showed a weird smile on his face again. The key words of the hint are love and peace. Oh, So you should not. Oh my beloved cat, your face has changed again. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist email. Chapter 448. When Makoto Takahashi reminded Yoshida that the theme of this story about a girl from hell is love and peace, Yoshida went into crash mode. Love, and peace. Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi in disbelief, twitching the corners of his mouth, and asked Makoto Takahashi again as if to confirm, the theme of this comic is actually love and peace. Etc. Wait a minute, did I hear it wrong or did you say it wrong, Cheng? My beloved cat, I am right, and you are also right. The theme of this comic is indeed love and peace. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida's unbelievable expression and shook his head helplessly. He shook his head and sighed in a sad tone, you didn't see my beloved cat? Alas. Sure enough, when wisdom transcends the realm of mortals, the only thing that can accompany me for the rest of my life is the snow-like cat. So lonely. No, I think after reading the first chapter of this comic, I can relate to the guy of love and peace. Yoshida said this, staring at Makoto Takahashi with suspicious eyes. Silent after a moment, he pointed his finger at his head and continued to roar, either there is a problem here, or there is a problem here, or there is a problem here, there is absolutely no second possibility. My beloved cat, after all these years, it seems that you are still stuck at the level of mortal wisdom and have not grown at all. In response to Yoshida's sarcastic complaints, Takahashi Makoto always responded with sharper words. Fighting back, completely ignoring the black lines on Yoshida's face, Takahashi Makoto beat the table sadly and used the secret technique, fake crying with great emotion. My beloved cat, I am so disappointed. Are you worthy of me, who has worked so hard to cultivate you all these years? Are you worthy of the little sea otter who has always let you do whatever you want? Is it worthy of me who has always treated you as a confidant and cultivated me? Mr. Pavlov and Mr. Schrödinger. By the way, where does this comic show the so-called love and peace? Although he tried his best to ignore Takahashi Makoto's complaint-style ridicule, Takahashi Makoto's words still stimulated Yoshida. At least Yoshida was asking the question when playing Takahashi Makoto. He showed a domineering side that he had never seen before. Yoshida picked up the manga manuscript from the table and flipped it quickly, roaring angrily at Makoto Takahashi. I carefully observed the content of the first chapter. I don't deny that the plot of the manga story is very interesting. But Aiken, you said this comic is trying to show love and peace, but I don't see it at all. The plot of a tragic girl using the Hell Girl to kill a hateful character, damn it. How can you show your so-called love and peace? It's just depression and despair from beginning to end. Alas. You can't understand my familiar cat because you haven't met the Demon King who can lift your seal yet. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida quietly for a while with sympathetic eyes, and felt extremely pitiful. He sighed with emotion, I am blinded by worldly common sense and unable to analyze the most essential existence of things. My beloved cat, your life is still sad. Humph. Really, Yoshida was unhappy with the way Makoto Takahashi looked at him before speaking. He was also unhappy with the tone of Makoto Takahashi's words. What was even more unhappy was that as the editor-in-chief of a cartoonist, he was actually reduced to being targeted by a man. The two cartoonists have sympathy. Okay, yes, I admit that an ordinary person like me has indeed not seen the love and peace shown in your comics. So Cheng, can you explain it in detail and let me listen to you as a cartoonist? How did the cartoonist Hohoin Kuma, who has the great ideal of love and peace in mind, come up with this comic in the first place? According to Yoshida's long-term experience with Makoto Takahashi, once a middle-class cartoonist enters the state of contempting mortal wisdom, As long as he lowers his profile, it will be easy to extract some information from Makoto Takahashi. Of course, the premise is that you have to withstand the arrogant ridicule of a certain middle-class cartoonist before and after, and suppress the ancient power in your body that may be stimulated to go berserk. Humph. A mere mortal and actually dares to talk about the ways of heaven with us gods and demons. My beloved cat, it seems you have the consciousness of reincarnation. Although he had strengthened his spirit before, Zay Takahashi before Makoto answered, Yoshida began to recite the mantra silently in his heart. If your heart is as clear as ice, you will not be shocked when the sky falls. However, Takahashi Makoto answered without following the script, and almost caused Yoshida to be unlocked by the legendary 4th level of the gene lock. Inner Demon's Invasion. Didn't I tell you before? And didn't the hints clearly given in the comics, but the price that humans have to pay for using hell communication, and the way Hell Girl drags people into hell, what is the meaning behind this? My cat, please think about it carefully, as long as you can bear it this time. Attack. Hell Girl, who appears through resentment, after taking people to hell, using hell communication. Is the so-called resentment really completely eliminated? This time psychic attack can still hold on. By the way, although this comic and DN also belong to the type of mysterious killing technique comics, its meaning is completely different. Burning small universe explosive seed transformation. Hold on, the dawn of victory is about to happen. It's coming. While Yoshida was enduring Takahashi Makoto's stormy commentary, he tried to give himself the self-suggestion that perseverance is victory. God knows if Yoshida will develop a second personality if this goes on for a long time. Oh, you seem to have understood something after seeing my cat. Takahashi Makoto looked at Yoshida, who was pale and lost in thought, with a smile of I am very relieved on his face, and turned to Sadaharu and Ruri beside him and said with emotion, see. Being able to strengthen your spirit and will in all kinds of mental torture, and still not forgetting to think about the true meaning of life when facing all kinds of difficulties, this is what is called human, this is what is called the ruler of the earth. Sadaharu, Ruri, although you have talents that humans cannot match, if you want to become stronger, learning from weak humans is also a compulsory course in the future. Of course, the ugly nature of humans must not be learned. Not only can he guide Yoshida into the thinking mode, but he can also take the opportunity to educate Sadaharu and Ruri. Takahashi Makoto is quite satisfied that he can kill two birds with one stone. However, just when Takahashi Makoto was about to proceed with the next plan and continue to get this satisfaction, Yoshida, who had been silent all the time, spoke up. Aiken, I still don't quite understand, where exactly does your comic show the so-called love and peace? After using human language, you still can't communicate? Alas, my dear cat, your IQ, no, I should say your life is completely hopeless. Takahashi Makoto looked at Yoshida helplessly. Originally, I thought that although your intelligence was slightly lower, it was at least at the top level among the editors. It's my fault. It's my fault for overestimating you. I'm really sorry for my low IQ. I'm really sorry that there is no abnormal brain circuit structure like you, Cheng, in my brain. He didn't use the three-stage spitting that Yoshida was usually good at to fight back. It was obvious that Yoshida had reached the critical point of anger explosion and lost his due reason and judgment. Oh my beloved cat, are you finally entering the anger explosion mode? Facing Yoshida, who was about to go berserk, Takahashi Makoto smiled happily. But in this way, when I explain the real way to observe this comic, maybe you can understand it better. From what Takahashi Makoto said, it seemed that he was deliberately making himself angry. Yoshida suddenly felt like he was being tricked. Takahashi Makoto, you plotted against me. Plotted against you? No, 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 my beloved cat, all this is the choice of Steins Gate. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 449. In order to facilitate the explanation later and to prevent Yoshida from being blinded by anger and losing his temper, Makoto Takahashi specifically asked Yoshida to put all the single volumes of DN on the bookshelf on the table. "Hey, Makoto, I'm waiting for your explanation." After finally sorting out the single volumes of DN, Yoshida complained to Makoto Takahashi unhappily, "If you don't explain it clearly later, humph. Moving a thick stack of comics to the table is a physical job." Of course, the root cause of Yoshida's anger is that Makoto Takahashi did not put his debut works in the most conspicuous position like other cartoonists, but randomly placed them in various positions on several bookshelves. Looking for the single volumes of DN from the 3 bookshelves, especially some of the single volumes were crazily wrapped in other book covers by Makoto Takahashi. If it weren't for the fact that Makoto Takahashi would seriously explain the new comics to him later, Yoshida would have gone on strike long ago. "Hey, my cat, before I explain the new comic to you, I have to confirm one thing with you first." Takahashi Makoto squatted on the sofa, stroking the magic sword, and asked Yoshida in a serious tone, "Have you ever resented me, or even resented me to the extent of wanting to kill me?" I. Yoshida originally wanted to give a positive answer, but after seeing the magic sword in Takahashi Makoto's hand and the right eye of a certain Chuyuni cartoonist that occasionally flashed with murderous intent, the shameless Yoshida violated the principle of real men should tell the truth in order to survive, and shook his head against his will to deny, I have never thought of killing you, Chen." "Really? That's really regretful, cough cough, it really makes me happy, hey, Takahashi Makoto, when you say this, dare you not show that kind of regretful look of task. My cat actually gave such an answer that didn't give me an excuse to kill him. Okay, now that I have answered your question, Aiken, then." Yoshida, who made the right choice and escaped the disaster, naturally did not want to continue talking with Takahashi Makoto about this topic that endangered his life, and decisively began to distract Takahashi Makoto's attention. "Can we start analyzing your new manga now?" "Tisk," Makoto Takahashi pouted unhappily, pointed at the single volume of DN on the table, and slowly said to Yoshida, "Then let's start with the manga DN. My beloved cat, what do you think Light Yagami is?" "Wait, aren't we going to analyze that new manga? Why do we have to start with DN?" Yoshida stared at Makoto Takahashi with a suspicious look, and asked suspiciously, "Could it be that what you said before about love and peace was completely nonsense?" "Of course not." Makoto Takahashi suddenly turned his head away and muttered softly, "It's just that I just think that with your wisdom, my beloved cat, it's hard to explain it to you clearly without using examples." "Okay." Yoshida suddenly felt a sense of helplessness after being fooled by Makoto Takahashi's unnatural behavior. Feeling the power, he spread his hands helplessly, then, "Chen, go on." In the comic DN, Light Yagami's will, or mental power, is beyond the scope of normal humans. My cat, do you agree with this? Looking at Yoshida's thoughtful look, Takahashi Makoto continued to add, "After Light got the small book, whether it was killing the first person or punishing criminals, killing his own kind as a human being, Light, who can have such awareness and can transform the guilt of killing into his own motivation to become the god of the new world, can't be measured by normal human standards in a sense. In a sense, I think Chen you seem to be." Yoshida complained in his heart, while pretending to nod and agree with Takahashi Makoto's point of view, "It's really hard for you, Yoshida-kun. Killing is something that humans cannot bear mentally or willfully, because humans are humans, neither laws nor gods, and have no right to punish others, so no one in the world has the right to deprive others of their lives." Takahashi Makoto picked up the new comic on the table, flipped it gently, and slowly said to Yoshida, "In the beginning, the price of using the death book in DN, perhaps the readers did not notice it, but after this comic is serialized, perhaps most readers will understand that in a person's life, there is only one person who can be killed, and that is oneself. Should I say that Ah Cheng is worthy of being a graduate of the Department of Philosophy? He looked completely confused, but he said such words. Is Yoshida complimenting? This is definitely a compliment. After using hell communication, although you can send the person you hate directly to hell, as a price, after you die, your soul will not be able to reach the paradise, and will forever wander in hell, enduring endless pain and torture. Takahashi Makoto read the words of Inmai in the comics, then looked up at Yoshida seriously. Hey, my cat, from this rule, have you noticed anything? Do you think the setting is familiar? Well, when I first saw this, I did have a familiar feeling. Yoshida was very happy that Takahashi Makoto could communicate normally. Actually, the answer is very simple. It's the law in reality. Makoto Takahashi watched Yoshida's expression change from frown to realization and then to frown again. Before the other party could ask a question, he continued to explain, in reality, except those mentally abnormal beings, many of them kill people because their resentment has reached a level beyond their control, but in the comics, this is a condition for being able to connect to hell communication. You said that. After Yoshida thought for a moment, he looked at Makoto Takahashi in surprise. Could it be? In reality, after human beings kill other people, they will be punished by the law and go to prison on the charge of murderer, or even be sentenced to death. Makoto Takahashi slowly closed the manga manuscript in his hand, sighing to Yoshida, who was thinking, but in the comics, it is not so cruel. It just allows people who use hell communication to be punished after death. But no matter what kind of resentment it is based on, or what kind of reason it is based on, killing is killing. As I said before, people can only kill themselves and have no right to deprive others of their lives. Makoto Takahashi put down the comic. He gently combed the hair on Liuli's body, who suddenly jumped into his arms, and suddenly showed a helpless smile. But my familiar cat, you have also seen that in the comics, Yamae I once did. There have been reminders to tell humans the price of using hell communication, but humans still use it regardless of the cost because they cannot bear their resentment. Everyone has moments when they are so resentful that they want to kill others, so even if there are legal restrictions, in reality, some people still commit murders, and in the comics, because of the existence of hell communication, the people dominated by resentment are even more unscrupulous. Although Takahashi Makoto tried his best to explain the comics to Yoshida in a calm tone, Yoshida could hear the helplessness in Takahashi Makoto's heart. However, human beings have never thought that if their hearts are filled with love, if they are not dominated by the so-called resentment, what kind of changes will happen in this world without resentment? A peaceful world. Yoshida laughed at himself with the same lonely expression. So my familiar is cat. Now do you understand the true meaning of this comic? Makoto Takahashi's eyes flashed with extremely dazzling light. This comic called Hell Girl has brought great changes to mankind. It is not an opportunity for unscrupulous killing, but just to let the existence called human beings know that the resentment between people is not an excuse and reason to kill each other. And once the resentment between people is eliminated, isn't what is left called love and peace? There is 1 update on Monday, 2 updates on Tuesday, and 3 updates on Wednesday. For readers who think of 3 updates, a certain cat can only sigh. He is really kind and simple. Laugh. It depends on the situation. Although the sister who works in the same office as a certain cat is back, the distribution of workload is still one person doing the work of 2 people. Update a certain cat and do your best. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Email. Chapter 450. The day before the monthly serialization meeting was held, it happened to be the day when the monthly magazine was released. That's right, it was the monthly issue that published Zan by manga artist Shizukawa and Electromagnetic Gun by manga artist Makoto Shinkai. Regarding the cartoonist Jing Hehe, most readers regard Jing Hehe as a newly debuted cartoonist. Although Jing Hehe had published a short story in a weekly magazine before, it was a long time ago, especially in the highly competitive weekly magazines, where short-lived cartoonists abound. But then again, the monthly magazine Jump that publishes Jinghe's comics is now. In a sense, Jinghe can be regarded as a newly debuted cartoonist, at least compared to the crazy one who has the title of Scumbag Makoto. For the cartoonist Makoto Shinkai, the situation is basically like this. You must know that the cartoonist Makoto Shinkai succeeded in killing many readers with his debut work Madoka, which was serialized in the weekly magazine. In addition, he later cooperated with the game company where Kei Nakahau works, and released after playing some 18-ban games with crazy endings. It once again killed many gamers. In the comic Madoka, when Homura repeats reincarnation again and again to save Madoka, how many readers want to drag out the cartoonist Makoto Shinkai and cut them into 8 pieces, chop them up and feed them to the dogs, after seeing in the comic Madoka, in order to save the trapped magical girl, Madoka is willing to sacrifice her peaceful and happy life, transform into a being with rules, and use her personal will to fight against the rules of the universe. How many readers can't wait to see the cartoonist Makoto Shinkai bombard the corpses with whips, and then light the sky lanterns after carrying the corpses in procession. In the comic Madoka, after seeing the 5 colored girls who were full of hope to become magical girls, they died and disappeared full of despair and sadness. How many of them came from the readers of the Lowly Protection Association and the Gentleman's League want to send the manga artist Shinkai Makoto to the gallows and burn this twisted and cruel most evil king in history? Of course, the other identity of the cartoonist Makoto Shinkai, the screenwriter of some 18-ban game scripts, for game players, has been included in the highest assassination order. A certain 18-ban game School Days was marketed as a school love game. When it was first released, it attracted a lot of otaku players who like love girl games. And when these gamers who were full of endless longing for pure campus love, after playing seriously for a while, they realized that they had been cheated. In the 18 Forbidden Love strategy game, for gamers, the most attractive thing, apart from watching some indescribable scenes, should be to enjoy life in the Crystal Palace that cannot be experienced in reality. Generally speaking, although this kind of game has the ending of the Crystal Palace, few people can complete this legendary ending the first time they play it, except for a certain four-eyed strategy god. Under normal circumstances, most game players will fail to conquer a certain character after starting the game. This is a normal thing. After all, some games are set up like this. If you want to collect all scenes or all for CG and other things, in most cases it takes the second or even third round. However, this time the game signed by Makoto Shinkai has some unexpected settings. The game player clearly wanted to complete the super pleasant ending of the world and Yanya are in harmony with the Crystal Palace, but as a result, either the World Kill Yanya branch was triggered, or Yanya's Hatch Knife Disembowelment branch was triggered. Of course, that's all. What makes game players the most chilling is that the male protagonist who was the winner in life in such games in the past was brutally killed by all kinds of bloody, cruel, and violent things in this game. Although this result is indeed very satisfying for the game player side, but how to say, as a game player side, it is difficult to overcome various options that suddenly appear, determine the strategy role and development route. Many times, when it was about to succeed, he died of illness in front of the hospital, and had to do it all over again, especially after a certain second-grade cartoonist actually used the building the Crystal Palace quite mockingly after the male protagonist was brutally killed. The road is very dangerous, please come again, heroes. This kind of crazy blood-red text reminds all players of the failure of this game. If such a plot only appears in a certain game, it may be explained by coincidence. However, the few games with the title of plot writer, Makoto Shinkai, are basically full of the kind of character of a middle-class cartoonist. The evil taste of ghosts and beasts cannot be explained by coincidence. Although the game company where Jingzhonghao Jisang works did not give any explanation, all players who have been cheated by these games know very well that these games that look very tempting are definitely Shinkai Makoto used to take revenge on society. The cartoonist Makoto Shinkai once serialized the manga Pula Magi Madoka Magica in the weekly Shonen Jump and is also the script writer of many well-known games. On the day the monthly magazine was released, I saw the name Makoto Shinkai, especially after seeing the official annotation behind the name by the monthly editorial department. Many readers fell into a state of entanglement. According to feedback from many bookstore owners who sell monthly magazines, many readers who bought the monthly magazines on the same day usually uttered exclamations such as "eh" or "huh" mixed with surprise and doubt after seeing the cover of the monthly magazine. Then these readers could not wait to open the package, quickly turn to the column of introduction to the cartoonist, and utter discordant words such as "wow" and "damn." Finally, when these readers began to read the comics, they began to utter painful wails such as "the scumbag Makoto is going to harm the girl again," or "I have seen a tragedy about to happen." Of course, curiosity about unknown things is the irresistible nature of human beings, so many readers did not retreat because of the fierce reputation of Makoto Shinkai, but instead began to read the comics with the awareness that it won't kill you to take a look. At first I thought that this boy named Kamijutuma wanted to save the junior high school girl who was besieged by bad guys, but I didn't expect that he wanted to save those bad guys. Haha, this opening is really interesting. The boy's last name is Kamiju. Seeing this last name, I can basically be sure that this boy will definitely have a strong love luck in the future. For a detailed analysis, please refer to Madoka Madoka. The creator of the spoiler Girls Blackening also has this last name. Training superpowers, most of the personnel are composed of students. Is there really a school institute city? Oh, everyone, spoiler for the last page of this manga, a certain scientific railgun is awesome. After reading the last page, even if I know this is a manga by the scumbag Makoto Shinkai, I plan to follow this manga to the end. Great. Mikoto on the last page, ahem, I'm a good person and never spoiler. Misaka Mikoto is awesome. Because of these comments on the internet, many readers who were still hesitant finally couldn't hold back their curiosity and started to read the manga A Certain Scientific Railgun Revised signed by Makoto Shinkai. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 451. When Landai came to the studio early in the morning, he found that his gay and friendly partner seemed to have arrived earlier than him today. If it was just like this, Landai wouldn't think it was abnormal. What really made Landai feel that his good gay partner's behavior was abnormal was that he ran to the studio early in the morning and read the newly released monthly magazine attentively. Hey, Chi-Ren, is this the new serial between Cheng and his new wife Eiji? The tragedy limited comic rumored on the internet. After taking a curious look, Landai's classmate immediately recognized this new series. The comic series is A Certain Scientific Railgun Kai. Although he wanted to complain about his good friend's behavior of running into the studio early in the morning to read comics, but after observing with his good friend for a while, Landai asked the question he was most concerned about: is it related to the rumors? This new series is the same as Madoka. The content in the beginning is very happy and inspirational, but then it suddenly turns into a sadistic one. Is it limited to tragedy? The yellow-haired glasses gentleman paused while flipping through the comics, pushed up his glasses without saying a word, and after pondering for a moment, he showed a helpless smile. I see, if you just read it, after the opening part, combined with the previous serialization of Madoka by Cheng and his wife in the weekly, there will indeed be such an illusion. Isn't it? Looking at the helpless smile on his good friend's face, Landai took out his mobile phone and looked up the previous reviews of this comic on the internet. Look, Chi-Ren, everyone is saying that. Perhaps the person who made those comments just read the beginning, right? The man with yellow-haired glasses closed the comic, turned to his good friend and asked seriously, I say the best, you must still read this comic. Haven't you read it? Although I know you have put a lot of thought into the weekly comic manuscript, but I suggest, no, I hope you can read this comic carefully. But I still have a lot of comic drafts to complete today. Although his good friend suddenly said this with some doubts, when Landay thought of his unfinished comic drafts, he decisively shook his head and rejected the other party's proposal. And Akito, although I don't need your help when I finish the manga, didn't I say before that it takes a lot of time to come up with a new series? Now I actually have the time to read the new series. Well, the highest, although I also know that completing the comic manuscript is a high priority, but... The yellow-haired glasses man stubbornly raised the monthly magazine in his hand again, and couldn't help but raise his voice. I have something very important. I have something to tell you. Although I think you may be angry or find it unbelievable after I tell you, I'm talking about Chi-Ren. Is it necessary to be so excited? After being startled by his good friend's sudden increase in voice, Landai reluctantly picked up the monthly magazine and asked while flipping through it, "So, what do you want to say, Chi-Ren?" That's, that. The yellow-haired glasses man scratched his head in confusion, and after pondering for a long time, he whispered, "Anyway, it's best that you finish reading this manga by Makoto Shinkai first. I'll tell you in detail after you've finished reading it." Sometimes when humans are communicating, a careless sentence may cause some changes. For example, after the boy Tuma casually commented on Mikoto's figure, his identity immediately changed from hero on the field at a critical moment to must kill in this life. Can make the next development of things feel pleasant. This is probably the so-called coincidence, right? Another example is the group of good friends Yachin Mumanjai who were communicating, but they didn't notice that it was already working time, so why the assistant hadn't arrived yet. Outside the door of Yachin Mumanjai's studio, the two female assistants did not enter the studio directly as if they were finished. Instead, they stood at the door, refusing to enter. If you look closely, you can see the expressions on the two female assistants' faces at this moment. Scarlet red, her ears pressed tightly against the door, listening carefully to the conversation between Akin Mumanjai's best friends inside. "Hey, Mi-chan, do you think Mr. Takagi will confess next?" "Of course," Miwi said in a low voice after making a silencing gesture to her companion with a blushing face. "Yuna-chan, we can't be discovered now. If Teacher Takagi's confession is successful, we will work together, bless them. If Teacher Takagi's confession fails, we will act as if nothing has happened and just keep it as usual." "Miwi-chan, sure enough, Takagi-sensei is gone, right?" Yuna didn't know what she thought of, her face turned even crimson, and even her words became stuttering. On the surface, there should be nothing wrong with this. Miwi bit her finger gently and whispered after a moment of silence, "But it is not absolute. In short, regarding this issue, as long as Teacher Takagi and Teacher Genli are together, after that, let's take a closer look." "Yeah. So, being able to become the assistant of Teacher Ajumumenha is definitely the greatest choice in my life." Yuna pressed her whole body against the door of Aki Umumenha's studio and whispered. She sighed happily, "Perhaps I can also witness the forbidden love between Teacher Takagi and Teacher Sincerely that is not understood by the world." "Ah, Yuna, I am so happy. Teacher Sincerity and Mr. Takagi." My why, who was thinking, suddenly showed a fanatical look on her face. "Humph, at the comic exchange meeting next month, the comics I completed based on this theme will definitely be well received." He. Landai and the yellow-haired glasses gentleman, who were being harmonized by the two Fujoshi assistants, were carefully observing the comics in the monthly magazine. Originally intending to just observe the comics of Makoto Shinkai, Landai's classmate, when observing a certain scientific electromagnetic gunkai, after catching a glimpse of the comic genre by the cartoonist Shizuka Kawai, he recalled in his mind the time he had studied with Makoto Takahashi. After meeting the silent assistant at home, either out of curiosity or for some other reason, I teamed up with my good friends to observe this comic. At the beginning, the man with yellow-haired glasses just wanted his gay friends to observe the comics of Makoto Shinkai. But after seeing the words cartoonist Shizukawa, he chose to observe this comic with his good friends without any hesitation. Unlike Lande, after seeing the name Jinghe River, the man with yellow-haired glasses recalled the previous comments from the editor-in-chief of Hattori. Hattori's editor originally evaluated Shizukawa as a cartoonist who is better at evil comics than Ajumma Menha, and that period was also the period when Ajumma Menha was at his lowest. At that time, Ajumma Menha, a good friend who heard editor Hattori's comments, thought it was editor Hattori who wanted to take the opportunity to encourage the two of them, but judging from the current new serial called Jean, those words at the beginning were probably not the encouragement that Yachin Mumenjai and I understood, but a fact that makes both Yachin Mumenjai unbelievable. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 452. In a world full of school idols, singing a song when disagreeing is a behavior that everyone can understand, just like in the Dragon Ball world, exploding clothes and transforming into battle when disagreeing and so on. In the world of cartoonists, this behavior has a new way of spreading, that is, the combination of reading comics when disagreeing and serializing multiple works when disagreeing exclusive to a certain middle school cartoonist. However, for Yashiro Mumenai, it is only at the level of reading comics when disagreeing. When I first read this comic, Landai didn't think it was that exciting, because apart from the opening chapter where Misaka Mikoto and Shirai Kuriko used superpowers, the content afterwards was no different from ordinary school comics, such as girls going shopping together after class, buying things and eating sweets together. The plot of the first half of this comic is basically based on the little things that the girls experienced in their lives to show the different characteristics of the girls. If the comics had continued in this style, then this comic would at most be just a daily comic under the guise of Superpower Academy. So when the bank robbery incident appeared in the comics, Landai changed her previous careless attitude and observed the comics seriously. Shirai Kuriko, who has the ability of space movement, showed her strong strength as a member of the discipline committee and easily solved the two robbers. Hatsuharu, who looked weak, contacted the guard team as soon as possible and also supported Shirai Kuriko as a member of the discipline committee, and Satan Ruko, who did not have any superpowers, did not feel afraid of this sudden incident, but helped the tour guide to find the missing children. The superpower battle between Shirai Kuriko and the bank robbers, perhaps because Shirai Kuriko's ability was too domineering, was not described in many chapters in the comics. This disappointed Landai. However, after Landai finished reading the following plot, he realized that the previous content was just a foreshadowing for Misaka Mikoto. Kuriko, what follows is my personal behavior. After seeing Satan Ruko being kicked by a bank robber in order to save a child who was almost taken hostage, before Shirai Kuriko took any action, Misaka Mikoto ignored Shirai Kuriko's warning and intervened in the battle between the ability users with an angry face. Misaka Mikoto, with lightning flashing all over her body, faced the robbers who were driving towards her in a desperate manner, and just threw the game coins in her hand up, and when the game coins thrown high fell, Misaka Mikoto used electricity to drive them, and turned them into a beam of light, directly hitting the oncoming car driven by the robbers. The pride of Tokiwada, the invincible electric princess. No matter how surprised the trapped robbers were, no matter how proud Shirai Kuriko was, and no matter how violent the explosion was after using a certain scientific railgun, the page of the comic where Misaka Mikoto used a certain scientific railgun made Landai feel extremely shocked. Let's not talk about the comic by Cheng and the others. Jinghe's Jean is really great. After putting down the comic manuscript, Landai looked at his good friend with a serious face, and the style of this comic feels very similar to our comic. According to the words of editor Hattori, it is also a comic of evil ways. Indeed, when I first read it, I thought Tatsumai would take the noble lady on an escape journey. I didn't expect there would be such a turn later. The yellow-haired man with glasses pushed his glasses, and his tone revealed admiration. It starts with the Kingly Way comics, and then turns to Evil Ways comics. It seems that the evaluation given by the editor of the manga artist who is better at Evil Ways comics than Yashiro Mimha is really true. Hey, Akito, didn't you say that as a cartoonist, you must first be confident in your own comics? Landai felt a little resentful about the evaluation given by his good friend, although I also think Jinghee's comics are great, ours are not bad either. It's not like that, the most great, a comic can start with Royal Way and then reasonably turn to Heretical Way in the middle, although I am a little unwilling, I have to admit that even I can't do this. Looking at his good friend's astonished expression, the yellow-haired man with glasses took off his glasses and wiped them gently, and continued to speak in a comforting tone, but as I said just now, there was indeed a gap between us and Jinghee-kun in the past, but now, if it's just a competition of Heretical Way comics, I am confident that I can compete with Aiken or Nizuma-kun. Akito, I take back what I said before. You are not unconfident, but overconfident, right? Landai complained to his friend unhappily, leaving aside the plot, there is a certain gap between my handling of comics and Cheng and Eiji. But at least I am not as bad as I was a few years ago, right? The mean-spirited man with yellow hair and glasses used a finishing blow on his good friend. This is one of the special ways for friends to improve each other's favorability, and people who don't have this talent can't learn it. After a moment of awkward silence for his good friend's amazing finishing blow, Landai decisively chose to use his amazing skill of changing the topic. Speaking of Akito, why did you ask me to finish reading Cheng's comic today? Of course it's because this comic by Makoto Shinkai can solve the shortcomings in our comics, at least I think so. The man with yellow-haired glasses was very careful in choosing his words when he spoke, so as to be able to explain his own opinions. Thoughts, but also take into account the hearts of good gay friends. In a sense, Mr. Huang-haired glasses, you are really lucky. What's the flaw in our comics? Landai looked at his good friend in surprise and asked suspiciously, so, what is that flaw? It really is a gap in the plot, right? Well, in terms of plot, it's not right. The yellow-haired glasses man, who had his birth point distorted by his good friend, reacted very quickly. He immediately used the magical manipulation of pushing glasses to cover up his embarrassment, and changed his words without changing his expression. The flaws I mentioned were the portrayal of female characters in our comics at that time. Is the heroine poorly portrayed? Recalling the heroines in my previous comics, it seemed that they were basically designed in the image of the CEO's sister. Landai instantly became weak and turned his head away, muttering in a low voice. He said, this is something that can't be helped. Because in order to complete the comic manuscript, we stay at home most of the time and don't have too many social activities at all. The best, I'm not just talking about the heroine, but also the female characters that appear in the comics. The yellow-haired glasses man interrupted the weak speech of his good friend very forcefully, and then took out an issue of the Weekly Shounen from the bookshelf junk, start to give examples of good gay friends. Just like the previous weekly series Madoka, that comic was completely dominated by female characters, but each character has its own characteristics, which is easy for readers to distinguish. However, among our comics the male characters are already pretty good, but in terms of female characters, compared to other cartoonists, I personally feel there is still a certain gap, let alone Cheng or Eiji. This seems to be. To give a simple example, due to the lack of experience in shaping female characters, even if I wrote a plot similar to a certain scientific railgun kai, the comic we completed would most likely not be able to even the editorial department. Even the serialization meeting cannot be passed. The yellow-haired glasses man pointed to the comic in the newly released monthly magazine and continued to analyze to his good friend, but the best, you have also read this comic, whether it is soft girl Chuchun or the optimistic, cheerful, and courageous Ruizu, or the girl Kuriko with a variety of attributes, every female character that appears in the comics is memorable. Misaka Mikoto's electric shock from the manga heroine. Indeed, after reading this comic again, I discovered that the portrayal of female characters in our comics is still far behind. Only by truly realizing one's own shortcomings can progress and improvement be achieved. This may be one of the reasons why Ajumu has become a popular cartoonist. And the style of this comic. Mr. Huang Mao and Glasses seemed to be at a loss for words. After pondering for a long time, he finally said, "I think it is very different from the previous styles of Aiken and the others." Tisk, how should I put it? What about the last page of the comic? Obviously it just knocked up a speeding car, but it demonstrated the power of that railgun to its fullest. It made me feel as if the power of that railgun could penetrate the sky. After listening to his good friend mentioning the last page of the comic, Landai naturally remembered the previous page of the comic that shocked him so much, and said something that made his good friend stunned. "Well, that's an exaggeration. That's how it should be." Although Landai has been working hard to improve his painting skills through serialization over the years, Landai's painting skills have improved significantly compared to when he debuted. Although Landai has won several times, I felt that the gap between Eiji Shinzuma and Makoto Takahashi was gradually narrowing, but it was not until today, after reading the last page of the comic, that Landai realized that while he was making progress, Eiji Shinzuma beat Takahashi Makoto, they are also making progress. Supreme, do you also feel this way? The yellow-haired glasses man sighed helplessly, and complained helplessly, "This is just the content of the first episode, and you create such a scene. Speaking of which, Cheng and Eiji, are those two monsters?" "Monster," classmate Landai whispered. "As for those two people, maybe they are, so-called monsters. But precisely because of this. It is precisely because when facing powerful monsters that I can better understand my shortcomings and understand where I am lacking." "Hey, Chi-Ren, now that you've finished reading the comic, you should think carefully about the next plot of our comic." Landai picked up the brush on the table, with a bright smile on his face. "Remember to paint the next chapter of our comic, make up for the time you spent reading comics." "Hey," spreading out the notebook where he wrote the comic plot, the man with yellow-haired glasses twirled his pen and agreed calmly. "I want to draw a better comic draft today." Landai clenched the brush in his hand. "I feel that this mood is stronger than before, 10,000 times. Being unable to defeat monsters is nothing to be ashamed of. But if you don't even have the courage to face monsters, will you still have the courage to challenge or even defeat monsters in the future?"